What's good? What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of The Urban Platform Speaks. Make sure to like and subscribe as you tune into the channel. Check out the content. And with that being said, man, I want to talk about how this generation of fans really got cheated when it comes to like the quality of play in the NBA. And if if as a fan, if you came after the Kobe Bryant and Tim Duncan era, then you really didn't get to see great basketball players in the NBA really reach their potential, right? And I'm gonna give you some examples of how like the generation that took over the NBA after once Kobe left and Tim Duncan left, like how they really the NBA changed, and that's why they say that like this era of basketball really is and for a lot of people they just think that this was the weakest era of basketball because it was all about player empowerment, and the player empowerment didn't really bring out the best in the players that that we've seen after Kobe left and after Tim Duncan left. And so when you think about like what player empowerment did, like for instance, like player empowerment put players in a position where you couldn't really coach these guys, right? So if you had great coaches around the league or some good coaches, like you really couldn't coach somebody like a LeBron James, because if LeBron James didn't like that coach, he would either he could either get you fired, like he did with so many of his coaches. Let me see. LeBron James got Mike Brown fired. He got the guy Blatt fired. Who else he get fired? He tried to get Eric Spoelstra if fired. Pat Riley didn't go for that. Pat Riley was old school. But and the importance of that is you as a player, you have to be able to be coached, right? And I made a video about that, I think probably a few days ago when I was talking about Tim Duncan and Greg Popovich, how Tim Duncan was coachable. Like Greg Popovich coached Tim Duncan like he coached the same way he coached like the guy, the 12th man on the bench. He was able to, basically cuss Tim Duncan out and point out, when he made mistakes and stuff like that. And because Tim Duncan was a great team player, he didn't really rebel against that too much, right? At all, really at all. And so when you think about these guys, LeBron James, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Kevin Durant, even Chris Paul, right? Just imagine and all of these guys had great NBA careers, and that's crazy for somebody to say, "Wow." For Chris Paul to be as great as he was, he could have been even better if he had been allowed to even, uh, if he had stayed in one place and allowed somebody to even coach him, right? That's what make you a better player. You can't have players coaching themselves and just living and just operating and playing off of physical ability and experience like as you go along. It and that's what all these guys did. Same thing with Kevin Durant. Just imagine if Kevin Durant had a stayed in OKC, and I forgot the coach that had was it Scott. I don't know if it was Scott was a coach when Kevin Durant first got to first Kevin Durant was they were what the Seattle they were Seattle, right? Um Seattle Supersonics, and then they moved to OKC, right? But the coach who was there, just imagine if Kevin Durant had a stayed at OKC for his entire career, or at least the bulk of his career. What happens is every year as a franchise player, you face different trials and tribulations, and you get challenged, right? And instead of running off to a new team where you can get new teammates, new coaches, and stuff like that, you got to stay in that place and build. You got to overcome. You got to stay in that situation and overcome that situation and allow that situation to sharpen you as an athlete mentally and physically and get better. And so when Kevin Durant left, that's why Kevin Durant caught so much flack when he left. He left OKC to go to Golden State. You know, people who knew better, people who has been watching basketball for years knew that it was kind of like a cop out. It was like taking the easy road. You know, Kevin Durant, in my opinion, he could have eventually beat Golden State. You know, he had all the talent. Even when he went to Golden State, he was the most talented player on that team. So there was no need for Kevin Durant to go there. But because he um because of player empowerment and all of that stuff, he was allowed to leave and go and get rings, right? And so when these guys don't stay in one place, then they're not you can't coach them. Same thing with like when you take about Giannis. Giannis won a championship ring, and then after they won a championship ring, that coach, what was it, Mike Budenhauser, they got rid of him, right? Which I think that's another thing. Is players from that era was allowed to they had too much say when it comes to like getting rid of coaches, having coaches moved out, bringing players to the team. Their focus was on, they were player, coach, and general manager. When it's tough enough to have success in the NBA as just a player, they didn't know, and it's not all their fault. I think it's the fault of the league and the coaches and stuff like that to not allow these guys to do more than what their job is. Like their job is to play, their job is to get better every year. And so that's how I think that they kind of ruined the NBA for their era. Now, what I see now coming in, I see is going back to old school. It's slowly but surely going back to old school. Whereas I see with like Shea Gilgris, and these young guys, I like the guy Tyrese Halliburton, Cade Cunningham. Now Shea Gilgris, I think this is his second team, second or third, second team. I know he played for where was he at? He was with the Clippers at one point in time, but I do think that Charlotte drafted him. But anyway, I think that these guys today are more coachable, right? And so if they're more coachable, that means that they'll be able to build relationships and build trust with the coaches that they have. And that will make them better players, not just their physical abilities and what they bring to the table as far as what they already know and their experiences. But you need to, as a player, you need to be able to lean on guys or coaches or grown men who know the game, who have experience in the game. That was the value of having coaches like Pat Riley, of having coaches like even Eric Spoelstra, right, is a really good coach because of his experience in the NBA. Chuck Daly and all those guys back in the day, Casey Jones, like those guys helped to make those franchise players that they coached, they made them better. And these guys who moved around from team to team or even had their coaches removed never got the benefit of that. So if they never got the benefit of the wisdom that those really good coaches brought to the table, did that mean that these guys never really maxed out their ability to be great players? And it's crazy to think about like LeBron James. Like LeBron James, for as good as he was, or as great as LeBron James was, right? For as great as LeBron James was, it's crazy to think that LeBron James could have been even better. Like had he stayed in one city with one team, I think like if LeBron James had to stay with the Miami Heat with Eric Spoelstra and Pat Riley. Pat Riley, I mean, they just know what they're doing as far as like how to build teams and put players around guys like, Pat Riley had Magic Johnson, he had Patrick Ewing, he had Dwayne Wade, so he would have did the same thing. And I think it would have been probably easier for Pat Riley to build around LeBron James than even for Dwayne Wade. And he'd have did the same thing LeBron James that he did in LA with Magic. You know, I think they would have had multiple rings. They won two, but I just don't think that these guys allowed themselves to be as great as they could have been. And for that, I just think that like the fans, especially young fans don't realize like LeBron could have been better. Giannis could have been better. Um, Kevin Durant could have been better. And that's crazy for people to say like Chris Paul for the great career that Chris Paul had. Chris Paul could have been a better player had he had the kind of coaching, the right coach, and he would have stayed there and just built with that coach. Chris Paul could have had the same type of career or even better than what Isaiah Thomas had. You know, Isaiah Thomas stayed with Chuck Daly for his entire career. And you saw from when Isaiah, well, you don't probably remember, a lot of people probably don't remember, Isaiah came into the league, and stayed with Detroit. And then you seen Chuck Daly and the guys above Chuck Daly were able to bring people in to help Isaiah get to the championship. Which I think, if you think about Isaiah Thomas leading his team to a championship as a guard, 6 foot, what they did as far as building around Isaiah Thomas was just crazy. Like Allen Iverson couldn't do that. Allen Iverson was a great guard, but to win 2 championships in a row as a guy who's only 6 feet tall, 6'1", it's just, you don't see that. You won't see that. That's why, like right now in the NBA, they're talking about trading and getting rid of Trae Young out of Atlanta because it's so hard for a shoot first point guard to win in the NBA because it's hard for them to score and they are limited. But Chuck Daly and the Detroit Pistons was able to do that. And Isaiah Thomas allowed himself to be coached. Isaiah Thomas, as a matter of fact, he was even in college, he was coached by Bobby Knight. And if anybody who remember Bobby Knight knew that Bobby Knight was like a almost like a tyrant, man. He was no joke as a coach. But yeah, man, these guys, because of the player empowerment and the freedom of movement that they had around the league, they just took the easy way out. And I think as fans, we didn't get to see the best of these guys, man, and with all this talent. Even Giannis. I think when Giannis won that championship, I think it was in 2021 when the Milwaukee Bucks won that championship. I thought that once it clicked with him that he was going to be off to the races and he was going to win multiple championships. But they got rid of the coach and they started letting Giannis be the general manager, and that, so that's and you see how that story's ended. Now Giannis could potentially be leaving the Milwaukee Bucks. So let me know what y'all think about it. As fans, I want to know from experienced fans who saw Kobe and Tim Duncan, and before Kobe and Tim Duncan, and look at those two eras and look at how guys allowed themselves to be coached, and and now look at like some of the new guys that's coming to the league, like Cade Cunningham, Tyrese Halliburton. I think those guys are going to bring back that era of sticking with their team, overcoming and persevering. So I think that era was just a throwaway era, in my opinion. I don't want to put it like that, but it just was an era where as though we didn't get the best out of some really great athletes, some really great basketball players. So that's my take on it. Y'all make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Also, don't forget to leave a comment. And with that being said, I'll check you all out in the next video. Peace.